Hey, I'm Sophia. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories take their time, and they are told the way I'd tell a friend late at night. I really hope you enjoy them. This story has one update on it and my own opinion at the end. Comment and tell me if you agree. Let's begin. When my parents tried to control my life, I packed my bags and left for good. And if you walk out that door, don't bother coming back, my dad said, his voice low and shaking with a kind of controlled rage I'd only ever seen when he talked about ungrateful children on the news. My hand was wrapped around the handle of my worn blue suitcase, knuckles white. The wheels hit the edge of the hallway rug and bumped, refusing to glide gracefully like they always did in airport ads. My mom was standing between me and the front door, arms folded so tightly across her chest I could see her fingers digging into her forearms. "Dad, please don't say that," I heard myself say. My voice sounded weird in my own ears, too calm, like it belonged to someone else. "I'm not joining a cult. I'm moving to a different city. I got a job. This is a good thing." "It's not about the city," he snapped, taking a step closer. I could smell his aftershave and the faint trace of coffee on his breath. "It's about respect. You don't just make life-changing decisions without consulting your family." "I did consult you," I said. "You just didn't like the decision." Mum's eyes were glassy but hard. "You're throwing everything away for what? Some stupid media job? With that boy?" "He has a name," I said, feeling that familiar hot sting behind my eyes. "And I got the job on my own." "Enough," Dad said. "If you leave, you're choosing them over us." The house felt smaller than it ever had, the walls pressing in, every childhood photo on the wall suddenly evidence in a trial I didn't remember agreeing to. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears, but my fingers tightened on the suitcase handle instead of letting go. It was a Thursday night in late winter when that scene happened, but if I'm honest, the story started way before the suitcase and the ultimatums. I'm 26 now, and I grew up as the oldest daughter of Lebanese immigrants in a smallish city where everyone knew everyone else's business. My parents came to Australia with nothing except 2 suitcases, some degrees no one here recognized, and a determination that their kids would never have to feel as unstable as they did starting over. I don't blame them for that part. But somewhere along the way, "We want you to have a better life" turned into "We own every decision you make." From as early as I can remember, there was a plan for me. Study hard, get perfect grades, become either a doctor, a lawyer, or maybe an engineer if I wanted to be creative. Marry a nice Lebanese boy from a good family. Buy a house within a 10 kilometers radius of them so they could help with the kids. I was the kid who colored inside the lines, mostly. I got the grades. I didn't party. I came home straight after school, helped Mum cook, did my homework at the dining table. If I was 5 minutes late, my phone would start buzzing. But I also had this secret, annoying thing: I loved stories. Not just reading them, I loved making them. In high school, instead of studying for physics, I'd be on my laptop late at night, writing scripts, editing videos, messing around with cheap editing software. I created a tiny YouTube channel where I'd post short, mini documentaries about random things. My grandparents' love story, my friends' small businesses, a day in the life of the lady who ran the corner shop. It never blew up or anything, but those projects lit me up in a way no chemistry experiment ever did. When I told my parents I wanted to study media and communications, my dad laughed for full 30 seconds. "Be serious," he said finally, wiping his eyes. "We didn't come to this country, so you could what? Post on Instagram for a living." Mum wasn't as loud, but just as firm. "Sweetheart, you're smart. Don't waste it. Do something stable. You can always do your creative hobbies on the side." So, I did what I'd been trained to do. I compromised in their direction. I enrolled in a double degree, law/media. The pitch was perfect. "I'll be a lawyer who specializes in media," I told them. "It's practical." What I didn't say was that in my head, the law part was the compromise, the media part was the part of me I was trying to keep alive. Uni was where I first met people who lived differently from anything I'd seen growing up. People who moved out at 18 without having a full family breakdown. People who changed degrees 3 times because they didn't vibe with commerce. People who talked about boundaries with their parents like that was a normal, not terrifying thing. It was also where I met Lucas. Lucas was in my media subjects, always sitting in the back row in hoodies, scribbling ideas in the margins of lecture notes. He was the first person who watched one of my videos and said, "You know this is actually good, right? Like industry good. Not just my friend's thing good." We ended up in a group project that turned into a campus-wide campaign. Everyone else treated it like another assignment. Lucas and I treated it like a pilot for a real job. We spent nights in the editing suite, eating vending machine chips, arguing about cuts and transitions. By the time we graduated, we had a small portfolio and the same dream: work in digital storytelling. My parents had other ideas. During my final law exams, Dad started leaving brochures from different law firms on my desk. Mom joined in by casually mentioning people who were so proud their daughter is a solicitor now at every dinner. When I got my offer from a mid-tier law firm, my parents threw a full party. They invited relatives I hadn't seen in years. There was a cake that said, "Our future lawyer," in blue icing. I remember standing there, everyone clapping, feeling like I was watching someone else's life happen around me. I tried the law job. I really did. For a year and a half, I wore suits that didn't feel like my skin. I smiled politely at partners who forgot my name. I billed in 6-minute increments and felt my brain calcify. Every time I opened a new document, a part of me wilted. I kept doing media work on the side quietly. I helped a friend edit videos for her small business. I filmed a local community event and posted a highlight reel that got shared around. It was nothing dramatic, just little sparks. Then Lucas called. "Hey," he said, sounding more excited than I'd ever heard him. "Remember how we always joked about getting paid to do the stuff we did for free?" "Yeah," I said, eyeing the pile of contracts on my desk. "I just got offered a job," he said. "A small digital studio in Melbourne. They saw the campaign we did. They're looking for another storyteller/editor as well. I gave them your portfolio. They want to interview you." My stomach flipped. "In Melbourne," I repeated. "Yeah," he said. "It's not Sydney. But it's real work. It's what we said we wanted." The interview was on Zoom. I took it sitting on my bed, laptop propped up on a stack of textbooks about torts and trusts. The studio founder, Tessa, was blunt and funny and asked smart questions about storytelling, not my law grades. A week later, they sent the offer. Full-time digital producer. Decent salary. Relocation assistance. Real projects, short-form docs, branded content that actually had a bit of heart, campaigns about mental health and community stories. I stared at the email for an hour. Then I forwarded it to Lucas. "Lucas. Emma. Say yes." I did something wild. I didn't tell my parents straight away. For 3 days, I lived in this quiet, private bubble where the decision was mine. I wrote a pros/cons list. I talked to friends. I prayed. I sat on the train to work and imagined my life if I stayed. Fluorescent lights, doc review, everyone bragging about buying investment properties at 29. Then I imagined making videos that might actually mean something to someone. I accepted the job, signed the contract, sent it back. Only then did I sit my parents down. We were at the dining table where I'd done my homework as a kid. Mom was chopping parsley. Dad was reading the news on his iPad. "I got a job offer," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "And I accepted it. I'm moving to Melbourne in a month." Silence. Dad slowly put his iPad down. "What?" "A job," I repeated. "In media. Full-time. Good salary. I've already signed." Mom laughed, but it was a harsh little sound. "Don't joke about things like that." "I'm not joking," I said. I slid the printed contract across the table. My hands were actually trembling. "They want me to start next month." Dad read it. His jaw clenched. "You quit the firm?" "I will be resigning on Monday," I said. "You didn't talk to us," Mom said. "You made a decision like this without your family?" I felt this weird mix of guilt and anger rising. "If I had told you before signing," I said carefully, "would you have supported it?" "No," Dad said immediately. Of course not. This is a foolish decision. Exactly, Mum said. You're throwing away a stable career for some video hobby. You can't even guarantee it will last. But I can guarantee that the law job is making me miserable, I said, my voice cracking despite my best efforts. I cry in the bathroom at least once a week. I dread Mondays. This job actually excites me. Dad's eyes flashed. Everybody hates parts of their job. You think I loved every shift I worked when we first came here? We did what we had to do. You don't quit because you're unhappy. That's a childish way to think. It's not childish to want a life I can actually stand living, I said softly. That was where the quieter pressure began. Pleading, guilt-tripping, bargaining. Just stay another year, Mum begged. Get more experience. Tell this studio to wait, Dad said. If they really want you, they will wait. This is a phase, Mum said. You always get excited and then bored. They brought up money. Marriage. Kids. Community reputation. They painted Melbourne like a war zone. They implied Lucas was manipulating me. They suggested I was being ungrateful, dramatic, selfish. I tried to explain. I showed them the studio's work. I broke down the budget I'd done, showing I could afford rent there. I promised to call every week. But in their heads, me choosing something they hadn't chosen was the same as me rejecting them. Which leads back to the Thursday night with the suitcase. I'd given notice at the firm. I'd found a share house online. I'd bought a one-way ticket. All that was left was to physically leave. I packed my bags like a thief, even though I was taking my own stuff. My childhood bedroom looked weirdly hollow with the bookshelves half empty and my favorite lamp gone. Mum saw the suitcase and all hell broke loose. What is this? She demanded. You're really going? Just like that? You're really doing this to us. I tried, one last time, to soften it. I'm not doing anything to you, I said. I'm doing something for me. That was when Dad said the line about not coming back. So I had a choice. Put the suitcase back, say, you're right, I'm sorry, I'll stay, and keep bleeding out slowly in a job and a life I didn't choose. Or accept that my parents loved the version of me they could control more than the actual adult me standing in front of them. My legs felt like they were made of jelly. My heart hurt. But something in my chest also lifted, like a bird that had been waiting too long. I looked at them both. Memorized the exact way they looked in that moment. Angry, scared, stubborn, hurt. I love you, I said quietly. But I'm going. I wheeled the suitcase past Mum. She didn't move out of the way for a second. Then she stepped aside, tears spilling over. If you leave, don't call me when you fail, Dad said. I opened the front door. The air outside was cold and sharp. Okay, I said. I won't. I walked down the front steps, my whole body shaking. I didn't look back. At the end of the street, Lucas's old Corolla was idling. I threw the suitcase in the boot, got in, and let myself finally cry. That was the night I left for good, at least that's what I thought at the time. Because leaving physically is one thing. Untangling yourself emotionally from years of control? That's a whole other story. And that's where things really began. Let me jump out of the narrative for a second, because there's a lot going on here. First, no, she is not dramatic for moving cities for a job. She's 26. That is a normal, healthy age to experiment with career and geography. The only reason it feels like treason is because her parents built a mental prison where dependence equals love. The parents' mindset actually makes sense if you zoom out. They went through real hardship immigrating, so stability became sacred. But somewhere, they fused stability with control. Instead of raising an adult who could stand on her own 2 feet, they unconsciously kept their daughter in emotional nappies so they could feel safe. That's not love. That's fear wearing a cardigan. If you leave, don't come back line is textbook emotional blackmail. You can practically hear the subtext. Our love is conditional on your compliance. It's also strategically cruel. They drop it at the exact moment she's most vulnerable, hoping she'll crack. What I love about Emma here is that she doesn't storm out screaming. She doesn't hurl insults. She simply goes. Calmly, shaking, heartbroken, but still. That's a quiet kind of courage people don't give enough credit to. Lucas and the Melbourne job aren't the villains her parents paint them to be. They're just symbols of another life. The fact her parents reduce him to that boy says a lot. They're less worried about him specifically and more about losing narrative control over their daughter. So far, everyone's behavior is understandable, but that doesn't make it acceptable. There's a difference. Okay, back to the story because it definitely doesn't end at the curb with a Corolla. Update. It's been just over a year since I left with that blue suitcase, and my life doesn't look anything like the disaster my parents predicted. The first few months were brutal, though. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I moved into a share house in Brunswick with two girls I met on a Facebook group, Mia, who did graphic design, and Zoe, a nurse who worked night shifts and kept odd hours. The place was old and a bit moldy in the bathroom, but the rent was barely manageable, and the living room had sunlight that poured in like we were being forgiven. For the first 2 weeks, I woke up every morning with a knot in my chest, waiting for a text from my mum saying, "Come home. We forgive you." Instead, I got silence. I kept calling at first. Every couple of days, I'd ring Mum. Sometimes the phone would ring out. Sometimes she'd pick up and keep her voice clipped and formal, like I was a telemarketer. "How are you?" I'd ask. "Busy," she'd say. "How's your job?" "Good," I'd say. "We're working on a campaign about youth mental health. I'm learning a lot." "That's nice," she'd say. "Your father is disappointed." After a while, I stopped dialing as often. It hurt too much to keep walking into that emotional cold front. The job, though, that part was as good as I'd hoped and harder than I'd imagined. On my third day, Tessa tossed me the lead on a small project. "We're doing a short social series on people who've changed careers midlife," she said. "Find 3 stories, interview them, shoot, edit, deliver in 4 weeks." I'd never managed a project from scratch before. I was terrified. I was also completely alive. I stuffed up. A lot. I double-booked shoots. I lost a memory card and had to re-record an interview. I sent a draft to a client with V2_final_final still in the file name. But I learned. My law brain came in handy for contracts and timelines. My media geek brain got to stretch properly for the first time. On the weekends, I worked freelance editing gigs to top up my savings. Some nights, I lay on my mattress on the floor, eating 2-minute noodles, wondering if my dad was right, and I was an idiot. Then the series came out. It didn't go viral or anything, but people watched it, commented, shared their own stories about changing careers at 40, 50, 60. One of our interviewees emailed to say she'd gotten 3 new clients after the video. Tessa forwarded the analytics with a note. "You did this." I screenshotted it and almost sent it to Mom. I didn't. The real turning point came 6 months in. We landed a contract with a mid-sized charity working with refugee communities. They wanted a full campaign, short films, social snippets, photography. Tessa put me and Lucas as co-leads. "If you two mess this up, I'm firing you," she joked. Then, more seriously, "I trust you. Don't make me regret it." Being in those community centers, hearing stories from people who'd gone through far worse dislocation than I had, messed with my head in the best possible way. Here were people who'd left entire countries behind, sometimes without choice, and they were still finding ways to rebuild. My move from Sydney to Melbourne felt tiny in comparison, selfish and brave, and small, and huge all at once. One woman, Nahid, said something that lodged in my brain and refused to leave. "You can love where you come from and still know you cannot go back to the same house," she said. "Sometimes the house is too small for who you are now." When the campaign launched, the charity organized a little event. They invited us, some donors, some of the families we'd filmed. There was hummus and cheap wine and kids running between legs. I was standing by the projection screen, watching Nahid's face fill the wall, when my phone buzzed. "Mum." My heart stopped. It was the first call she'd made to me in weeks. I stepped outside into the cool night air and answered with shaking fingers. "Hello."
"Hi," she said.
Her voice was small. "Are you busy?" "I'm at a work event. I said. But I can talk for a minute. Are you okay? Your aunt called, she said. She saw you on Facebook, in some video with Arabic subtitles. I blinked. The charity had posted the campaign in multiple languages. I hadn't even thought about families seeing it. Oh, I said. She said you spoke very nicely, Mum continued. She said it was important work. There was a pause. We didn't know you were doing this kind of thing, she said. I tried to tell you, I said, not unkindly. You didn't really want to hear. Silence again. Your father still thinks you should come home, she said finally. But I just wanted to say I'm glad you're okay. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't nothing. Over the next few months, the calls became more frequent and less icy. We skirted around the big topics like expert dancers. She'd ask about the weather, about what I was cooking, about whether I'd met any nice people. Then one day she slipped. Your cousin's daughter is studying communications now, she said. Her parents let her choose. Can you imagine? You say that like you didn't raise a daughter doing media who had to move states to make it happen, I said lightly. She made a tiny, pained sound. We made it hard for you, she admitted. We were scared. We didn't know this world. Law is safe. Doctor is safe. What you're doing, she trailed off. We didn't trust it. Or you. That hurt, I said. My voice shook. A lot. I know, she whispered. I see that now. A few weeks after that, she asked, tentative, maybe one day we can visit? I laid down a boundary for the first time in my life. If you come, I said, you come as guests, not as inspectors. You don't get to tell me how I should live here. You can ask questions, but you accept the answers. There was a long pause. Okay, she said quietly. We will try. The we hung in the air. I knew Dad would be the real test. He hadn't spoken to me directly since the night I left. He'd walked past the phone when Mum was on with me. He'd grunt in the background occasionally. That was it. When they finally came to visit, almost a year after I moved, I met them at Southern Cross Station. Mum spotted me first. She burst into tears immediately. We hugged for a long time, both of us shaking. Dad hung back, holding the handle of their suitcase like a shield. Hi, Baba, I said, my voice small. He looked at me, really looked like he was checking if I was still the same daughter who used to fall asleep in the back seat coming home from weddings. You got skinny, he said gruffly. Are you eating? I almost laughed. Yes, I said. I'm eating. We went back to my share house. I'd warned Mia and Zoe. They'd made themselves scarce, but left the place tidy and lit candles, which I appreciated. Watching my parents take in my life was surreal. Mum ran her hand over the couch. It's small, she said. It's mine, I said. She nodded. I showed them my workspace at the studio the next day. Tessa did a quick, tactful drop-in, praising me in that effortless way she had. We watched a rough cut of a new piece I was working on. Dad was quiet throughout. On the tram ride back, he finally spoke. You really manage all that? He asked. Yes, I said. That's my job. He looked out the window for a long time. When we came here, he said slowly, we were very afraid. Everything was new. We held on tight to what we knew, maybe too tight. I waited. I didn't like feeling powerless, he admitted. You leaving, making decisions without us. I felt like we didn't matter. You do matter, I said. But you don't get to decide my life for me. He nodded once. I see that now. The apology, when it came, was imperfect. It wasn't, I'm sorry I emotionally blackmailed you. It was, we only wanted you to be safe. We didn't realize safety can also be a cage. But for my parents, that was huge. We're not magically healed. They still make comments about real jobs sometimes, but now they catch themselves and correct. I still flinch when my dad's tone gets that sharp edge. I still have to remind myself that I'm allowed to live more than 20 minutes from their house. But I'm building a life that feels like mine. We just wrapped a campaign that I'm stupidly proud of. I pay my own rent. I buy my own groceries. I wake up most mornings excited about at least some part of my day. And sometimes on Sunday nights, I stand in my little kitchen in Melbourne, stirring a pot of lentils the way my mum taught me, phone on speaker as she tells me some new family drama, and I think, leaving didn't mean losing them forever. It meant finally finding myself. If they want to walk beside me now, great. If they decide to turn back, I keep walking anyway. Because I packed my bags once. I can do it again if I have to. And this time, I know I'll survive it. Alright, let's take a look at this messy little family ecosystem. Emma is the classic good girl, who eventually realizes the cost of being good has been her entire sense of self. For years, she did everything right, studied hard, picked the respectable degree, took the safe job, while quietly smothering the part of her that actually felt alive. When the media job comes along, it's less a random opportunity and more a lifeline. The boldest thing she does isn't moving to Melbourne. It's signing that contract before telling her parents. That's the first time she acts like her life belongs to her. Walking out with a suitcase isn't selfish, it's late-stage self-preservation. And the way she handles it, no screaming match, just firm boundaries and receipts, shows a maturity her parents refuse to acknowledge. Mum is emotionally tangled, but not malicious. She's the bridge between old world and new world, and she's terrified of watching her daughter walk into what she doesn't understand. Her go-to tools are guilt and fear because those are the tools that worked on her. When she says things like, "You're doing this to us," she genuinely feels betrayed, even though, from the outside, we can see that Emma is simply leaving home like millions of other adults. What redeems Mum is that she eventually does the one thing stubborn parents rarely manage. She admits she was wrong. "We made it hard for you" is a small sentence with a huge weight behind it. Dad is more complicated. His identity is welded to sacrifice and control. He survived hardship, so in his mind, pain is normal and dreams are luxuries. His "if you leave, don't come back" line is brutal. It's the emotional equivalent of slamming a door. But beneath the bluster is a terrified man who fears becoming irrelevant in the life he broke his back to provide. When he finally visits Emma's new life and sees she's not starving in a ditch, something cracks. His baby isn't just surviving. She's leading campaigns, signing contracts, talking to managers like an equal. He doesn't know how to integrate that with the helpless child in his head. His apology is clumsy, but for someone like him, admitting we held on too tight might as well be sobbing on a therapist's couch. As for Lucas and Tessa, they're less characters and more catalysts. Lucas is the friend who sees Emma's talent long before she does. He doesn't save her, he just opens a door and yells, "Run through it." Tessa is the boss that proves to Emma that authority figures don't have to be controlling. They can actually empower you. The real villain in this story isn't any one person. It's the belief that love equals ownership. Once Emma rejects that idea, everything else starts shifting. Her parents either adapt or lose access. She chooses herself without erasing them, which is arguably the hardest possible path. In the end, no one gets a flawless redemption arc, and that's what makes this feel real. Emma doesn't get a new, perfect family. She gets a more honest, slightly messy version of the old one while building her own life on her own terms. And honestly, that's about as happy an ending as adult family dynamics ever get.